Ma, this came for you. They said it's urgent. Stop! Bring back the letter!
Judith Adeyemi was still smiling when her maid stretched out the brown envelope. The morning had started like any other morning in her mansion in Lekki Phase 1. Clean air from the ocean side and bright sun. Judith had just finished a short call with her personal assistant about a meeting in Victoria Island. Then Stella said, "Ma, this came for you. They said it's urgent." The envelope looked ordinary and plain. No stamp that stood out. No big logo, just Judith's name written neatly. Stella's hand was stretched out, careful, as if she was holding something delicate. Judith reached forward casually. That was the exact second her security dog, Noble, ran. He jumped. Not on Judith, not on Stella, but on the letter. His mouth clamped on it like it was a snake. Stella screamed, "Ah, Noble!" Judith froze. "Noble, stop!" But Noble didn't stop. He shook his head hard, left, right, like he was trying to tear the envelope open. Then he wrenched it from Stella's fingers and dropped to the ground, paws pressing it down. His tail wagged fast. Not happy wagging. It was a warning. The kind of wagging he did when the security men tested the gate alarm and he sensed strangers. Nathaniel, Judith's driver, who was already in the compound polishing the black SUV, paused mid-wipe. One of the guards by the gate lifted his rifle slightly, confused. Judith took one step forward. "Noble." "What is it?" Noble snapped his head up and stared at her. His eyes were sharp and begging at the same time, like he was saying, "Madam, don't come closer." Then he grabbed the envelope again and sprinted toward the open gate. "Close the gate," Judith shouted. But it was too late. Noble flew out through the gate before anyone could react properly. And the next thing they heard was a loud blast. Not close enough to tear the whole house down, but loud enough to shake the walls, loud enough to turn the air hot for a second, like the sun had. Moved nearer. Judith's ears rang. Her heart jumped. The maid's tray inside the house clattered on the marble floor. For a moment, nobody could move. Then everyone started talking at once. What was that? God, what just happened? "Madam!" Judith ran. Her heels scraped against the tiles, but she didn't stop. The security men chased after her, shouting orders into their radios. Nathaniel jumped into action too, running behind her. As Judith reached the gate area, she saw it. Part of the fence was down. Not the whole fence, but a chunk of it, broken and scattered, dust floating like smoke. Some plants near the side were bent over, trembling. Judith's mouth went dry. "Noble!" she screamed. Her voice came out sharp and thin, like it wasn't even her own. She scanned the ground wildly, and then she saw him. A few meters away from the broken fence, her loyal security dog, Noble, lay on his side, still. Judith's legs nearly gave way. She rushed to him and dropped to her knees. Her hands touched his fur, warm and dusty. His chest was rising, but barely. "Ah, Noble." Her voice cracked. "My good boy." "No, no, no." One of the security men tried to hold her. "Madam, please, stay back." "Leave me," she snapped, not even turning. "Bring the car, now." Nathaniel was already sprinting back. "I'm bringing it, Ma." Judith slid her arms under Noble carefully. He was heavy, strong dog, trained well, not small. Her blouse got dusty. Her arms shook. She didn't care. She lifted him, cradling him like a child. Her eyes stung. She hated herself for crying, but she couldn't stop it. It just came, because it didn't make sense. It was just a letter, a stupid letter. So why had Noble behaved like the letter was death? Why had he carried it outside like he knew something everyone else didn't? Nathaniel skidded the SUV close. The back door opened. Judith climbed in with Noble in her arms. "Hospital, now." "Which one, Ma?" "Anything close?" "No. We're going to Reddington, Victoria Island. Drive." The tires screamed as Nathaniel pulled out. Inside the car, Judith pressed her cheek against Noble's head. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Please, don't leave me, not like this." Noble's eyes were half open, his breath was shallow. But his tail, it moved once, just a small movement. Like he heard her, like he was trying. Nathaniel drove like a man chasing time. The city rushed by, Lekki toll area, The usual morning bustle starting, street sellers arranging their goods, people looking up at the speed of the SUV as it passed. Judith didn't see any of it clearly. All she saw was Noble's face. All she felt was fear. And behind the fear, another feeling. A cold one. Someone tried to kill me. The thought landed in her mind like a stone. Judith Adeyemi was not a new billionaire. She had fought her way up. She had seen greed. She had seen betrayal. But a bomb. A letter bomb. That wasn't business rivalry. That was war. At Reddington Hospital, nurses rushed out with a stretcher. A doctor came quickly, calm but serious. Judith explained in broken breaths. It exploded near our fence. He took it out. The letter. He saved me. The doctor nodded like he had heard unusual stories before, but his eyes softened as he looked at Noble. We'll do our best. Please, follow me. They took Noble in. Judith stood in the hallway, arms empty, hands shaking. Nathaniel hovered close, looking helpless. 2 security men arrived and stood guard, scanning the area, whispering into their radios. Judith leaned against the wall and tried to breathe slowly. But she couldn't stop her mind. Stella's face flashed in her thoughts, how the maid had stretched her hand out, polite, normal, like it was any other letter. Judith didn't want to accuse anybody. Not yet. Still, her stomach tightened, because she remembered something small, something she had almost ignored. Last week, Stella had been jumpy when the gate bell rang. She had asked too many questions. Who is at the gate? Did the guard check properly? At the time, Judith had thought Stella was just being careful. Now it looked different. Judith pressed her palm against her forehead. God. A nurse came out after what felt like a lifetime, but was probably only minutes. Madam, are you the owner? Yes. He's alive, he's stable, but we need to monitor him closely. Judith's breath finally released. She almost slid to the floor. Can I see him? Not yet. But soon. Judith nodded, wiping her face quickly like nobody should see her tears, even though everybody had already seen them. She sat down on the metal bench and stared at the white wall. Her phone buzzed. It was her chief security officer, Mr. Okafor. Madam, we heard something happened. Judith's voice was quiet now. It was a bomb, a letter bomb. Noble took it out. There was a pause on the line. Madam, that means it was meant for you. I know. Please, don't return home today. We need to secure the area. Judith looked down at her dusty sleeves like she was seeing her own body for the first time. I'm not running from my own house, she said softly. But yes, secure everything. Check every camera. Check the gate logs. Every single thing. Yes, madam. When Noble was finally brought out for her to see, he was lying on a clean bed with a bandage around part of his body. His eyes were open but tired. His tongue peeked out slightly. Judith walked in slowly. She sat beside him. For a few seconds she didn't speak. She just stared. Because she had money, but money did not buy loyalty like this. She stroked his head gently. Why did you do it, Noble? His tail tapped the bed weakly. Judith laughed once, a small broken laugh. Then, her eyes filled again. You're too good for this world. She stayed at the hospital for hours. She cancelled her meeting. She didn't care who got angry. Let them be angry. She wanted Noble alive. By evening, the doctor said Noble needed rest and observation overnight. Judith didn't want to leave, but she had to. The doctor promised to call her if anything changed. Outside the hospital, her security men surrounded her like a moving wall. People stared. Some recognized her. Judith Adeyemi, CEO of Judith Group, the woman who had become a headline more times than she liked. Normally, Judith kept her head high. Today, she felt exposed, like someone had peeled off the skin of her life and shown her how fragile it was. Back at home, the next morning, the compound looked different. Not because it had changed completely, but because Judith's eyes had changed. The broken fence had been temporarily covered and marked. The gate was closed tight now. Extra guards were posted. The air felt tense, as if the house was holding its breath. Judith stepped out of the car and looked around slowly. Stella was standing near the entrance, hands clasped, face pale. Her eyes looked swollen like she had cried. Ma, I'm sorry, Stella whispered. Judith didn't reply immediately. She looked at Stella's face carefully. Stella was young, 25, dark-skinned, always neat in her maid uniform, always quick to smile, always calling Judith mummy sometimes when she forgot herself. Judith had treated her like family. Stella had been with her since her divorce. Stella had seen her cry quietly in the kitchen late at night when the world thought Judith was strong and untouchable. Judith wanted to believe Stella was innocent. She really wanted to, but the truth didn't care what Judith wanted. Judith walked past her without speaking. Upstairs in her room, Judith sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her hands. Her mind replayed everything. The letter, Stella's stretched hand, Noble's jump, the blast. The missing piece was the letter itself, what it was, where it came from, who sent it. Judith's phone rang. Mr. Okafor again. Madam, we checked the outside area. The letter exploded as soon as it landed near the fence. The bomb technicians confirmed it. Judith's throat tightened. So it really was a letter bomb. Yes. Judith's voice turned cold. Then find out who brought it. We are reviewing CCTV now. The gate camera captured the motorcycle. Judith sat up straight. Good. I want the plate number. I want the rider's face. I want everything. Yes, madam. When the call ended, Judith stared at the wall again. Her heart was calmer, but her spirit wasn't. Because now she was remembering someone else. Chief Linus, her ex-husband, the man she once loved like a fool, the man who smiled beautifully in public and turned cruel in private. The man who had sworn, after the divorce, that Judith would regret everything. Judith hadn't taken him seriously. Why? Because in Lagos, rich men threaten rich women every day and still show up at charity events smiling. Judith thought she was safe because she was powerful too. But power didn't stop bombs. Judith stood up and walked to her window. From there she could see the compound clearly, the interlocking tiles, the gate, the guards. She imagined the letter in her own hands. She imagined opening it. She imagined not having Noble. Her knees went weak again. Judith whispered, God, if not for that dog. A knock came on her door. Madam, Stella's voice said softly, do you want breakfast? Judith's eyes hardened. Not now, she replied. Stella hesitated. Madam, are you angry with me? Judith didn't answer, because if she opened her mouth, she might say something she couldn't take back. Or worse, she might say something true. When Judith went, downstairs later, she found her security men setting up an extra screen in the living room. Mr. Okafor was there, face serious. Madam, the CCTV is ready. Judith walked in and sat down. The screen played footage from the gate camera. A motorcycle had arrived, black and red, common dispatch style. The rider wore a helmet, but not fully covered. His face showed briefly when he lifted the helmet to speak to the gate man. Judith leaned forward. Mr. Okafor paused the video. There, he said, pointing. That face. And this. He tapped the keyboard, zooming into the bike's back plate. We captured the plate number. Judith's mouth went dry again. Because the rider's face looked familiar in a strange way. Like she had seen him around before. Like he had been near her life. Judith swallowed. Can we track him? Yes, Mr. Okafor said. We can. But madam... He paused. Judith's eyes narrowed. But what? Mr. Okafor glanced toward the hallway, then lowered his voice. The gate man said the rider insisted the letter must be delivered only through Stella. He refused to hand it to anyone else. Judith's heart dropped into her stomach. Her fingers went cold. She turned slowly. What did you just say? Mr. Okafor repeated it carefully. He insisted it must be Stella that gives it to you, madam. Judith couldn't breathe for a second. Because that detail wasn't small. It wasn't normal. It was targeted and well planned. And it meant one thing. Someone close to her was involved. Judith stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. Call Stella, she said, voice shaking but controlled. Bring her here, now. Mr. Okafor nodded and signaled a guard. Judith's chest rose and fell. In the back of her mind, she heard Noble's growl again. A warning. And now Judith finally understood. The danger had not come from outside alone. It had walked into her house, wearing a maid uniform and a polite smile. As footsteps approached the living room, Judith's eyes locked on the doorway. Stella stepped in, nervous. "Ma, you called me?" Judith stared at her like she was seeing her for the first time, and Stella's eyes flickered, just once. A tiny flash of fear, not the fear of being shouted at, the fear of being found out. Judith's voice came out quiet. "Stella," she said, "tell me the truth about that letter, before I ask again." Stella's lips parted, her hands trembled, and outside, far away, a dog barked from a neighbor's compound. It was sharp and urgent, like the world itself was warning Judith to be careful. Stella opened her mouth to speak, and Judith realized the answer might break her heart more than the bomb ever could. Stella did not speak immediately. She stood there, right in the middle of the living room, her hands folded in front of her the way she always did when Judith corrected her gently or asked her to repeat instructions. Her eyes were lowered, lashes fluttering like she was fighting something inside her. Judith watched every small movement, the silence stretched and heavy. "Madam," Stella finally said, her voice soft, almost fragile. "I don't know anything bad about the letter, I swear." Judith didn't react. She didn't shout. She didn't slam the table. She just leaned back slowly on the chair and crossed her legs. That scared Stella more. Judith had learned over the years that anger made people defensive. Calm made them careless. "You don't know anything bad," Judith repeated quietly. "Yet the rider insisted that you must be the one to deliver it to me." Stella lifted her head quickly, too quickly. He said it was important," she replied. "He said if I delayed, something terrible would happen. I was scared, madam." Judith tilted her head slightly. "Scared of what?" Stella hesitated, just a breath, just a pause. I don't know. He was aggressive." Judith's eyes never left her face. Behind Judith, Mr. Okafor stood with his arms behind his back, observing. 2 guards stood near the door, pretending not to listen but missing nothing. Judith exhaled slowly. "Stella," she said, "look at me." Stella did. Their eyes met. Judith's voice softened. "I took you in when you had nothing. I paid for your brother's school fees. I let you sit in my kitchen and eat with me when I couldn't eat alone. I trusted you in my bedroom, in my house, in my life." Stella's lips trembled. Judith continued slower now. "If you know anything, this is the time to say it." For a second, Stella looked like she might break. Then she shook her head. "I don't know anything else, madam," she whispered. "Please believe me." Judith stared at her. She wanted to believe her. That was the painful part. Judith stood up. "All right," she said. "You may go." Stella blinked, confused. "Ma?" "You may go," Judith repeated calmly. "Return to your duties." Stella bowed slightly, relief flooding her face too fast. "Thank you, madam." She turned and walked out. The moment she disappeared into the hallway, Judith's calm cracked. She sank back into the chair and pressed her fingers into her temples. "That girl is lying," Judith said flatly. Mr. Okafor nodded. "Yes, madam." Nathaniel, who had entered quietly and stood by the door, cleared his throat. "Madam," she looked afraid, but not innocent afraid. Judith let out a short breath. "Exactly." She straightened. "Continue tracking the rider." "Yes, madam." "And tighten security," Judith added. "No letter, no package, no visitor enters this house without my clearance." "Yes, madam." As they dispersed, Judith was left alone in the living room. The house felt different now. Too quiet. Too big. She walked slowly toward the window and stared outside at the gate where everything had changed. Her reflection in the glass looked older, tired. She whispered, almost to herself, "Noble knew." That thought followed her all day. At the hospital, Noble lay quietly, wrapped in clean bandages. The doctor explained again that the blast shock had affected his eyes temporarily. "He may not see clearly for some time," the doctor said, "but dogs are resilient." Judith sat beside Noble and held his paw. "Temporary," she repeated softly. "That means there's hope." The doctor smiled faintly. "Yes, madam, there is." Judith stayed longer than planned. She spoke to Noble as if he understood every word. You saved me, she whispered, and now I will protect you, I promise. Noble's ear twitched. When Judith finally returned home that evening, the compound lights were brighter than usual. Security vehicles were parked discreetly outside. The house felt like a fortress. Yet Judith didn't feel safe, because danger wasn't always loud. Sometimes it smiled. That night, Judith couldn't sleep. She lay on her bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of the air conditioner. Her mind kept replaying Stella's face, the way her eyes had flickered, the relief when Judith dismissed her. If she's innocent, why was she relieved? Judith turned on her side. Her thoughts drifted to Chief Linus, her ex-husband, the man she once called her forever. They had met years ago at a business conference in Abuja. He was charming, powerful, generous in public. He made her laugh, made her feel chosen. Their marriage had been beautiful, at first. Then came control, silent jealousy, rage behind closed doors. When Judith finally walked away, taking her dignity and rebuilding her empire alone, Linus had smiled and said, "You'll regret this." She hadn't. Until now. Judith sat up suddenly. She reached for her phone and dialed Mr. Okafor. "Madam?" He answered, sleepy but alert. "Any update on the rider?" "Yes, we traced the motorcycle registration. It's linked to a dispatch company in Aja. But the bike was reported stolen 2 months ago." Judith clenched her jaw. "And the face? We enhanced the footage. Facial recognition is running. It may take some hours." "Wake me if anything changes," Judith said. "Yes, madam." She dropped the phone and leaned back. Sleep did not come. 2 days later, Lagos moved like it always did. Busy, loud, impatient. But inside Judith's house, tension sat heavy. That morning, Mr. Okafor walked in with urgency written all over his face. "Madam," he said, "we have him." Judith looked up sharply. "Who?" "The rider. His name is Barnabas." Judith stood. "Where?" "He was picked up near mile 2. He tried to run." "Bring him." "Yes, madam." Barnabas arrived handcuffed, flanked by officers. He was lean, in his late 30s, sharp eyes that looked like they had seen too much and felt nothing. Judith studied him. "This is the man who brought the letter?" she asked. "Yes, madam," Mr. Okafor said. Barnabas laughed softly. "Letter?" he said. "I just do deliveries." Judith's eyes hardened. "You delivered a bomb to my house." Barnabas shrugged. "I don't know anything about bombs." Judith leaned forward. "You insisted the letter be delivered through my maid." Barnabas's eyes flickered, just once. Judith smiled without warmth. "I saw that." Barnabas said nothing. Judith stood and turned to Mr. Okafor. "Take him." Barnabas laughed louder now. "You think you're untouchable, madam?" Judith stopped and faced him. "No," she said. "I think you made a mistake." The door closed behind them. Barnabas did not talk at first. Not when they questioned him. Not when they showed him the footage. And not when they mentioned the blast. He sat quietly, staring at the wall, until someone mentioned Stella. That was when his shoulders dropped, and he sighed. "She said it would be quick," he muttered. Mr. Okafor leaned in. "Who said?" Barnabas swallowed. "The girl, the maid." Everything moved fast after that. Barnabas talked, not all at once, not easily. But the truth came out in pieces. Stella had been meeting him secretly, paying him small amounts at first, then more. "She said her boss was wicked," Barnabas said. "She said the woman ruined someone important's life." "Who?" Mr. Okafor asked. Barnabas hesitated, then said the name, Chief Linus. Judith's world tilted, her ex-husband. Barnabas continued almost detached. "He paid well. He said he wanted it clean, no noise, just an accident." Judith sat back slowly when Mr. Okafor told her everything. She felt cold, not shocked, just hollow. "She took money from him?" Judith asked quietly. "Yes, madam." "And she lived under my roof," Judith whispered. "Ate my food?" "Yes, madam." Judith closed her eyes. Betrayal hurt differently when it came from someone you loved. That evening, Judith called Stella into her room. Stella walked in nervously. Judith sat on the bed, calm. "Sit," Judith said. Stella obeyed. Judith placed her phone on the table and played the audio. Barnabas's voice filled the room. She said her boss ruined Chief Linus. Stella froze, her face drained of color. Judith stopped the recording. "Talk," Judith said. Stella burst into tears. "I'm sorry," she cried. "I didn't mean for it to go that far." Judith's voice shook. "You didn't mean for me to die." Stella sobbed harder. "He promised it would scare you, just scare you." Judith stood up slowly. "Get out of my room," she said. Stella fell to her knees. "Please, madam, I beg you." Judith turned away. "Security." They came quickly. Stella screamed as they handcuffed her. "I was angry," Stella cried. "You had everything. He said you destroyed him." Judith finally turned back. "He destroyed himself," she said. Stella was dragged away, still crying, and Judith collapsed onto the bed, shaking. 3 days later, Noble opened his eyes properly. He saw Judith and wagged his tail. Judith laughed and cried at the same time. "My hero," she whispered. But outside that room, arrests were being made. Chief Linus was no longer untouchable, and Judith knew this was far from over. As Chief Linus's convoy was stopped and sirens filled the street, Judith received a message that made her blood run cold. "Madam, the evidence goes deeper than we thought." Judith read the message again, once, twice. Then a third time, slowly, like the words might change if she stared long enough. "Madam, the evidence goes deeper than we thought." Her fingers tightened around the phone. Outside her bedroom window, the Lagos night hummed as usual. Distant horns, a generator coughing somewhere, a dog barking far away. Life was moving. People were sleeping, waking, laughing, arguing. But inside Judith Adeyemi's chest, something heavy had settled. She exhaled slowly and dialed Mr. Okafor. "What do you mean by deeper?" she asked the moment he picked up. There was a pause. Not long, just long enough. "Madam," Mr. Okafor said carefully, "this was not a one-time plan." Judith sat up straight. "Explain." "The money Stella received didn't start last month," he continued. "It started over a year ago." Judith's throat went dry. "A year?" "Yes. Small payments at first, regular, tracked through indirect transfers, sometimes cash, sometimes through third parties." Judith closed her eyes. It has been a year since Stella started receiving money from him. That meant Stella had been smiling at her, cooking her meals, washing her clothes, helping her dress, for board meetings, while being paid to destroy her. "What else?" Judith asked quietly. Mr. Okafor lowered his voice. "There were other attempts, failed ones." Judith felt her heart skip. "Attempts?" "Yes. We found messages. Plans that didn't succeed." Judith stood up and paced her room. "Why didn't I notice anything?" "Because they were subtle," Mr. Okafor replied. "A delayed brake inspection, a wrong address once sent to your driver. Small things, things that could be blamed on chance." Judith stopped walking. Nathaniel, her driver, her heart pounded. Nathaniel, was he involved? "No, madam," Mr. Okafor said quickly. "We checked. He was not." "But someone tried to set him up." Judith pressed her hand to her mouth. So many close calls, so many moments where death had brushed past her quietly, and she had been unaware. "Chief Linus?" Judith asked. "Yes," Mr. Okafor confirmed. "He coordinated everything, but he didn't do it directly. He used layers." Judith let out a short, bitter laugh. "Of course he did." She ended the call and sank into a chair. For a long moment, she just sat there, thinking and remembering. Judith remembered the first year after her divorce, how lonely she had been, how empty the house had felt, how Stella had stepped in gently, offering tea, listening, staying quiet when Judith cried. Judith had thought it was kindness. Now she saw it for what it was. Access. Trust. Time. Judith's chest tightened. She had built Judith Group from nothing after leaving that marriage. She had fought through boardroom battles, public rumors, quiet sabotage. She had survived men who underestimated her, but she had not prepared for betrayal from inside her own home. She whispered, "How long were you hating me, Stella?" There was no answer. The next morning, Judith arrived at the hospital early. Noble was sitting up now, his bandages cleaner, his eyes clearer. His sight was still adjusting, but he could see shadows and movement. The moment he heard Judith's voice, his head lifted, his tail wagged. Judith smiled despite herself. "See me?" she asked softly. Noble let out a low sound and shifted toward her. She sat beside him and stroked his fur gently. "You saved my life," she said again, like saying it made it more real. "And now, you saved me from trusting the wrong people too." Noble rested his head on her knee. Judith sighed. "You know what hurts the most?" she whispered. "It's not the bomb. It's not even Linus." She paused. "It's that I thought I was finally safe." She sat there quietly, letting that truth settle. Then her phone rang again. This time it was her lawyer. "Judith," the woman said, her voice firm, "Chief Linus has been arrested." Judith closed her eyes. "When?" "Early this morning. His convoy was stopped in Ikoyi." Judith pictured him, confident, well-dressed, untouchable. Not anymore. "Good," Judith said simply, but even as she said it, she felt no joy. Only weight. Chief Linus did not look like the man Judith remembered when she saw him on the news later that day. He looked thinner, still proud, still holding his head high, but his eyes were different. They were searching. The reporter's voice filled the living room as Judith watched the footage. Billionaire businessman Chief Linus Okori was arrested earlier today in connection with an attempted assassination involving an explosive device. Judith muted the television. She leaned back and stared at the ceiling. This was real now, public, ugly, and irreversible. That afternoon, Judith agreed to give a formal statement at the police headquarters in Ikeja. Security surrounded her as she walked in. Cameras flashed, questions were shouted. "Madam, did you know your maid was involved? Madam, is this connected to your divorce? Madam, do you fear for your life?" Judith didn't answer. She kept walking. Inside the interview room, she sat across from an officer who spoke gently. "Madam, we know this is difficult." Judith nodded. "I want justice." "And you will have it," the officer said. "But we need to understand everything." So Judith talked. She talked about the letter, about Noble, about Stella, about Linus. Her voice shook sometimes, other times it was steady. When she finished, the officer leaned back. "Madam," he said slowly, "your ex-husband did not just want you gone." Judith frowned. "What do you mean?" "He wanted your company." Judith laughed softly. "He always did." The officer shook his head. "No, he wanted it destroyed first, then absorbed." Judith's laughter stopped. "He planned to ruin Judith Group after your death," the officer continued. "There are documents, draft takeovers, shell companies." Judith felt a chill. This wasn't revenge. This was strategy, cold and calculated. "You were never the only target," the officer said. Judith swallowed. "Who else?" "Your legacy." That night, Judith couldn't bring herself to eat. She sat alone in the dining room, staring at untouched food. The house felt emptier than ever. No Stella moving quietly, no casual chatter, only silence. She stood up and walked slowly to the security wing where Noble's bed had been prepared for his return once he was discharged. She sat on the edge and imagined him there, alive, alert and watching. She smiled faintly. "At least I know who I can trust now," she murmured. Inside a cold detention cell miles away, Stella cried, not softly, not quietly. She cried the way people cry when they realize something too late. Her face was swollen, her eyes burned. She kept seeing Judith's face, the calm disappointment, the hurt. Stella wrapped her arms around herself and rocked, back and forth. "I didn't think it would go this far," she whispered again and again. But the walls did not answer. In another cell, Barnabas sat quietly. He stared at the wall, expression empty. He had known this day would come. 10 years of dirty jobs, 10 years of silence. He felt nothing now, only tiredness. Across the building, Chief Linus sat alone. No phone, no assistants, no friends. The silence was loud. For the first time in years, no one was calling him chief with admiration. He clenched his fists. "How did it fail?" he muttered. One word answered him in his mind. Noble, a dog, a foolish, loyal dog. Linus laughed bitterly. "To think," he said to himself, "my downfall started with a dog." Back at Judith's house, the gates were closed, security doubled. Judith lay in bed staring into the dark. She was tired. Not just physically, emotionally. She had spent years building walls to protect herself. And still, someone had gotten in. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Mr. Okafor. "Madam, there is something else you should see, tomorrow." Judith's fingers trembled slightly as she typed back. "What?" The reply came after a pause, a name, from Stella's records, one you won't expect. Judith's heart thudded. Unexpected names were dangerous. She turned onto her side and hugged a pillow tightly. "Please," she whispered into the dark, unsure who she was talking to, "let this end soon." But deep down she knew it wouldn't. Not yet. Because when betrayal spreads deep, it never travels alone. As Judith closed her eyes, her phone lit up one last time with a single line that made her chest tighten. "Madam, someone else inside your house was being paid too." Judith did not sleep. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling fan as it turned slowly, casting long shadows across the room. Each rotation felt like a ticking clock, counting down to something she could sense but not yet see. "Someone else inside your house was being paid too." The words replayed in her mind over and over. She sat up abruptly and reached for her phone. "Mr. Okafor," she said the moment he answered, "you cannot send a message like that and expect me to sleep." "I'm sorry, madam," he replied. His voice sounded heavy. "I wanted to tell you in person." "Tell me now." There was a pause. "Madam," he said carefully, "we are still confirming. But the evidence is strong." Judith swallowed. "Who?" "I don't want to say the name yet." Judith's grip tightened around the phone. "You already said it's someone inside my house. That alone is enough to make me panic. Tell me." Another pause. Then, "One of the night guards." Judith closed her eyes. A guard. Someone who held the gate keys. Someone who watched her sleep. Someone who walked the compound when the lights were low and the world was quiet. "What exactly did he do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "He didn't plant anything himself," Mr. Okafor said, "but he shared schedules, patterns, information." Judith felt a wave of nausea. "So they knew when I was home, when I wasn't, when security was relaxed." "Yes, madam." Judith pressed her free hand to her chest. Her heart was beating too fast now. "Is he still here?" she asked. "No. We removed him quietly tonight." Judith exhaled, shaky. "Good," she said. "I don't want any drama. Just remove anyone suspicious. I don't care how long they've worked for me." "Yes, madam." The call ended. Judith remained seated on the bed, her phone still in her hand. This was no longer about business rivalry. This was not even about revenge. This was about invasion. Her home, her last safe place, had been turned into a hunting ground. Morning came slowly. Judith stood by the window and watched the sky brighten over Lekki. The city woke up like nothing had happened. Traffic started early, vendors shouted, life continued. But Judith felt disconnected from it all. When she went downstairs, the house looked unfamiliar. Not because anything had changed physically, but because her eyes were different now. Every corner felt suspicious. Every sound felt watched. Nathaniel waited by the door, respectful as always. "Good morning, madam," he said. "Good morning," Judith replied, studying his face. Nathaniel met her gaze calmly. She nodded slightly. At least one thing felt solid. At breakfast, Judith barely touched her food. She pushed the plate away and stood. "I'm going out," she said. "Where, madam?" Nathaniel asked. "Court," she replied. The Federal High Court in Lagos was already buzzing when Judith arrived. Journalists crowded the entrance. Security held them back. Cameras flashed. Judith stepped out of the car with quiet dignity. She did not smile. She did not wave. She walked in like a woman carrying too much history. Inside the courtroom, she took her seat. The air felt tight. Expectant. Stella was brought in first. She looked smaller now. Her shoulders slumped. Her eyes were red. Her once neat hair was rough and untidy. When Stella saw Judith, she froze. Their eyes met. Judith felt a sharp sting in her chest. This was the girl who once hugged her when she came home exhausted. Now she sat there in handcuffs. Stella lowered her gaze. Barnabas came in next, his face unreadable, then Chief Linus. Judith felt something shift inside her when she saw him. He no longer looked powerful. He looked like a man whose world had cracked open. His suit was still expensive, but it hung looser on him now. His shoulders were tense. His eyes searched the room until they found Judith. For a moment, time slowed. Their eyes locked. Judith saw anger, then regret, then something darker. Judith broke the stare first. She looked forward. The judge entered. Justice Gabriel. The courtroom rose. Proceedings began. Evidence was presented. The letter bomb, the CCTV footage, the payments, the confessions. Judith listened quietly, hands clasped in her lap. Every detail felt like a cut. When it was Stella's turn to speak, her voice shook. "I was angry," she said, tears streaming. "I felt used, forgotten. He told me Madam ruined his life. I believed him." Judith closed her eyes briefly. Belief. That word hurt the most. Barnabas spoke next. "I did my job," he said flatly. "That's all. No apology, no regret." Chief Linus stood last. His voice was calm. Too calm. "I never wanted her dead," he said. "I just wanted her scared. I wanted control." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judith's hands tightened. Control. That was always his favorite word. The judge's face hardened. After hours of testimony, the courtroom grew quiet. Justice Gabriel adjusted her glasses. "This court has reviewed the evidence presented," she said, "and it is clear that the accused acted with intent, planning, and coordination." Judith held her breath. "The sentence," the judge continued, "is 30 years imprisonment without option of fine." A gasp went through the room. Stella cried out. Barnabas barely reacted. Chief Linus closed his eyes. Judith felt nothing. No joy, no relief, only exhaustion. As the gavel struck, she stood slowly. She did not clap. She did not smile. She simply watched as the guards led them away. Stella turned back, crying, "Madam, please forgive me." Judith's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed steady. "This is the consequence of your actions," she said softly, and then she turned away. Outside the court, reporters rushed forward. "Madam Judith, do you feel victorious?" Judith stopped. She turned to face them. Her voice trembled just slightly. "No," she said, "I feel sad. For trust lost, for lives wasted, for evil choices." Then she walked away. When Judith returned home, Noble was waiting. He had been discharged earlier that day. The moment she stepped into the compound, he ran toward her. His sight had returned. He barked loudly, tail wagging wildly, spinning in excited circles. Judith dropped her bag and crouched. Noble jumped into her arms. She laughed through tears. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're really okay." For the first time in days, her chest felt lighter, but peace did not last long. That night, as Judith sat in the living room, stroking Noble's fur, Mr. Okafor walked in quietly. "Madam," he said. "Yes? There's something you should know." Judith looked up. "Chief Linus spoke to someone before his arrest," Mr. Okafor said. "Someone we haven't identified yet." Judith's heart skipped. "What did he say?" Mr. Okafor hesitated. He said, "If I fall, I won't fall, alone." Judith felt a chill run through her body. Noble growled softly. Judith's hand froze on his back. Slowly she lifted her eyes to Mr. Okafor. "Find out what that means," she said. "Yes, madam." As the lights dimmed and the house settled into uneasy silence, Judith realized something terrible. The bomb had failed. The plan had failed. But the danger might not be over yet. Somewhere in the city a phone rang in the dark, and a voice whispered, "It's time to finish what he started." The phone rang again. Judith didn't move. It rang a third time before she slowly reached for it, her fingers calm on the surface, but her heart beating hard underneath. It was an unknown number. She looked at Noble. He was no longer growling. He was standing now, alert, still. His ears were up. That alone told her something. Judith answered the call. "Hello?" At first, there was only breathing, not heavy, controlled. Then a man spoke. His voice was low, careful, almost polite. You survived, the voice said. Judith closed her eyes briefly. Who is this? A short pause. Someone who knows Chief Linus was not working alone. Judith felt the weight of the words settle in her chest. You're making a mistake calling me, she said calmly. The man laughed softly. No, madam, I think I'm correcting one. The line went dead. Judith lowered the phone slowly. For a moment, the house felt too quiet again. Not peaceful quiet, watching quiet. She turned to Mr. Okafor, who had been standing nearby. Trace that call. We're already on it, madam, he said. Judith nodded. Noble barked once, sharp. Judith stood, locked down the house. Within minutes, the compound shifted. Gates closed, guards repositioned, lights brightened. The house became alert again, like a body preparing for another hit. Judith sat back down, but her thoughts were racing. Chief Linus had said he wouldn't fall. Alone, that meant he had shared power, shared secrets, shared enemies. And now someone else believed they had unfinished business. The next few days passed slowly. Judith cancelled all public appearances. Board meetings moved online. Her staff worked remotely. She stayed home. Not because she was weak, but because she was thinking, watching, listening. She learned something important during that time. Fear makes noise, but patience listens. Every night Judith walked the compound with Noble. She noticed patterns she had ignored before. Which guards stayed alert? Which ones leaned too much? Which ones asked unnecessary questions? Trust, she realized, was not about how long someone had been around. It was about consistency under pressure. Inside Kirikiri prison, Chief Linus was changing. The man who once commanded rooms now queued for food. The man who once spoke orders now waited. At first, he told himself it was temporary. Then days passed. No calls and no visitors. His friends had disappeared. The silence was loud. One night, he sat on his thin mattress and laughed bitterly. I did this to myself, he whispered. But regret did not bring relief, only awareness. And awareness was painful. Back in Judith's home, Mr. Okafor returned with information. Madam, he said, we traced the call. Judith looked up. And? It was routed through multiple lines, but we caught something, he continued. The voice belongs to a man named Felix Madu. Judith frowned. Who is he? A silent investor, Mr. Okafor said, former associate of Chief Linus. He lost money when your company rose and Linus fell. Judith leaned back. So this is business? Yes, but mixed with revenge. Judith nodded slowly. That combination was dangerous. Where is he now? She asked. We believe he's still in Lagos. Judith stood. Then it's time to stop hiding. Judith made a decision that surprised everyone. She announced her return publicly, a charity event at Echo Hotel. Media invited, lights, people. Mr. Okafor protested. Madam, it's risky. That's why it will work, Judith replied. If Felix wants attention, we give him a stage he can't control. Noble stayed close as preparations were made. He sensed the tension. The night of the event arrived. Judith stepped into the ballroom, dressed in calm confidence. Cameras flashed, music played, applause followed. She smiled, not because she felt safe, but because fear no longer owned her. From across the room, a man watched. Felix Madu, tall, quiet, well-dressed. He had come. Judith saw him. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Felix understood something too late. Judith was not running anymore. She was waiting. Security moved in smoothly, no chaos, no shouting. Felix was escorted out calmly, confusion flashing across his face. By the time the music resumed, he was already in custody. Judith stood still for a moment after, then she exhaled. The storm had finally lost its voice. Days later, Judith sat alone in her living room. Sunlight poured in. Noble slept at her feet. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mr. Okafor. Felix confessed. Linus planned everything, but Felix wanted to finish it. It's over now, madam. Judith closed her eyes, not in relief, in release. For the first time in a long while, the house felt like a home again. But healing was not instant. Judith found herself quieter, more guarded. She trusted fewer people. She laughed less easily. At night, she sometimes woke suddenly, heart racing. Noble always noticed. He would stand, walk to her bed, and rest his head against her. She would place a hand on his fur and breathe again. "You stayed," she would whisper. One afternoon, Judith visited the prison chapel, not for Linus, for herself. She sat in the empty room and spoke out loud. "I loved him once," she said, "and that doesn't make me weak. But I will never let love blind me again." Her voice echoed softly. She stood and walked out lighter. Judith returned home that evening and sat beside Noble. The sun dipped low. Orange light filled the room. She smiled faintly. "Tomorrow," she said, "we start again." Noble's tail thumped once, slow, steady, faithful, and for the first time since the bomb, Judith believed it. The danger was gone. That was what everyone kept saying. Security reports said it. The news said it. Mr. Okafor said it in his calm, reassuring voice. Even the police said it when they closed their files and shook Judith's hand. But danger leaving did not mean peace arrived. Judith learned that slowly, quietly. In the weeks that followed Felix Madu's arrest, life returned to a shape that looked normal from the outside. Judith Group resumed full operations. Board meetings were held in person again. Her name appeared in business columns. No longer linked to bombs or betrayal, but to profits and expansion. People congratulated her. "You're strong," they said. "You handled it well. You're lucky to be alive." Judith smiled politely each time, but when she got home, the smiles fell away. Because survival leaves marks you cannot see. Some nights, Judith woke suddenly, her heart racing, her body tense, as if she had heard an explosion again. The room would be quiet, too quiet. She would sit up, breathing fast, listening. And always, Noble would be there. He had developed a habit now. He no longer slept deeply. He slept lightly, alert, like a soldier who had seen battle once and refused to be careless again. The moment Judith stirred, he was on his feet. He would walk to her bed, place his front paws gently against the mattress, and look at her. Not asking, not demanding, just present. Judith would reach out and press her palm into his fur. "I'm okay," she would whisper even when she wasn't sure. Noble would wag his tail once, slow, reassuring, and somehow that was enough to let her breathe again. Trust did not return easily. Judith noticed it first in small ways. She stopped eating food she didn't watch being prepared. She checked locks twice, sometimes 3 times. She asked Nathaniel to confirm routes, even familiar ones. At first, Nathaniel didn't question it, but one evening, as he waited for her outside a meeting in Ikoyi, he spoke gently. "Madam," he said, "you're safe now." Judith looked at him. Was she? She nodded slowly. "I know." But safety, she realized, was not just about danger being gone. It was about the body believing it. And her body had not caught up yet. Inside prison, Stella's world had shrunk to concrete walls and iron bars. Days blended together. She replayed the past endlessly. Judith's kindness, Judith's trust, the envelope in her hands. Some nights she woke crying, hearing Noble's bark in her dreams. She wrote letters she never sent. She whispered apologies no one heard. Regret had become her punishment long before the sentence. Barnabas adapted. He always had. Prison was just another environment, another system. He survived by keeping quiet and watching. But sometimes even he wondered if it had been worth it. Not the money, the damage. Chief Linus changed the most. Prison stripped him of illusions. No one bowed. No one feared him. When he fell sick one night and lay on the thin mattress staring at the ceiling, he realized something bitter. Judith had survived without him, thrived, and now she would live free while he aged behind bars. That thought hurt more than the bars themselves. Back at Judith's house, something else began to happen. Something unexpected. People she had pushed away slowly returned, not employees, not associates. Real people, old friends who had stayed quiet during the chaos, unsure how to help. Her younger cousin came by one afternoon and said, awkwardly, "I didn't know what to say back then." Judith hugged her anyway. Her aunt visited and cooked soup without asking permission. Judith cried over it. Small kindnesses began to stitch something inside her back together. One afternoon, Judith did something she had avoided for months. She walked through the house alone. No guards trailing her, no phone in her hand. Just her and her loyal security dog, Noble. She opened doors, stood in rooms, let memories rise and fall. In the guest room, she remembered Stella laughing softly as they folded laundry together. Judith sat on the edge of the bed and closed her eyes. "I trusted you," she whispered. There was no anger left in the words, only sadness. She stood up and walked out. Some rooms, she realized, were meant to be left behind. That evening, Judith called a meeting with her core security team. "I'm not firing anyone," she said calmly. "But we are rebuilding trust from the ground up." She changed protocols, changed access levels, changed routines, not out of fear, out of wisdom. Mr. Okafor watched her closely. "You've changed, madam," he said later. Judith smiled faintly. "I had to." Weeks passed, then months. Judith slowly returned to herself, not the old self, a new one, quieter, sharper, more intentional. She laughed again, not loudly, but genuinely. One morning she found herself humming while making tea. She paused, surprised. Noble looked up at her. She laughed softly. "I guess that means I'm healing." One day, Judith received a letter, not a brown envelope, not urgent. Just a simple handwritten note from a women's shelter she had supported years ago. They invited her to speak, to share her story. Judith stared at the letter for a long time, then she folded it and placed it on the table. That night, she told Noble, "I think it's time." The day of the talk, Judith stood on a small stage in Surulere. No cameras, no reporters, just women. Some broken, some angry, some quiet. She told them the truth, not the polished version, the fear, the betrayal, and the loneliness. She paused often, let her voice shake, let the silence speak. "I learned something," she said near the end. "Strength is not pretending you're fine. Strength is surviving, and choosing not to become bitter." When she finished, the room was quiet. Then one woman stood and clapped, then another. Judith stepped down, feeling lighter than she had in a long time. That night, she sat in her living room, lights low. Noble beside her. She looked at him and smiled. "You didn't just save my life," she said softly. "You saved my heart too." Noble rested his head on her lap. Outside, Lagos moved on. Inside, Judith finally felt like she had too. But life had one more test waiting. Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. And some endings still needed closure. Judith's phone buzzed. A message from the prison chaplain. "Madam, Chief Linus has requested to see you." Judith stared at the screen. Her heart slowed, her breath steadied. She looked at Noble, then back at the phone. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed again. But others, you choose whether to open them. She whispered, "Not yet," and set the phone down. As Judith turned off the lights, unaware eyes watched her house from a distance, quiet, patient, waiting to see if the past would truly stay buried. The first thing Judith noticed was the quiet. Not the dangerous kind. This was a calm, steady quiet, the kind that comes after a long rain, when the ground has finally absorbed enough water and no longer feels thirsty. Morning light filtered through the curtains of her bedroom in Lekki. Noble was already awake, lying beside the bed, his head resting on his paws, eyes open. Watching, not guarding, just watching. Judith sat up, slowly and stretched. Her body felt lighter than it had in months. She smiled faintly. "Good morning, soldier." Noble wagged his tail once. Judith stood, walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside. The compound looked ordinary again. Clean tiles, trimmed flowers, guards changing shifts calmly. Ordinary had never felt so precious. The message from the prison chaplain stayed on Judith's phone all day. "Chief Linus has requested to see you." She read it many times. She didn't reply. Instead, she went about her day. She attended a board meeting. She approved a new community project. She laughed at a joke one of her executives made and surprised herself by how natural it felt. But the thought followed her quietly, like a shadow that no longer frightened her, but refused to disappear. By evening, Judith knew the truth. Some conversations were not about the other person. They were about freeing yourself. That night she called the chaplain. "I'll come. Tomorrow," she said. The prison visiting room was plain. Plastic chairs, a metal table. No softness, no comfort. Judith walked in with calm steps, Noble not allowed past the gate this time. She felt his absence, but she did not feel weak. Chief Linus was already seated. When he saw her, he froze. For a moment he looked like he wanted to stand, or apologize, or run. Instead he stayed seated. He looked older, thinner, not broken, but worn down. Judith sat across from him. Neither spoke at first. The silence stretched. Finally Linus cleared his throat. "You look well." Judith nodded. "I am." That alone hurt him. "I didn't think you'd come," he admitted. "I didn't come for you," Judith replied gently. "I came for myself." Linus swallowed. "I ruined everything," he said quietly. "I see that now." Judith studied his face. There was regret there, but also something else, fear of being forgotten. "You didn't ruin everything," she said. "You ruined yourself." Linus flinched. Judith continued, her voice steady. "I lost trust. I lost peace. I lost people I loved. But I didn't lose myself." She leaned back slightly. "And that's what you couldn't stand." Linus looked down. "I wanted control," he whispered. "When you left, I felt invisible." Judith nodded slowly. "That was the problem. You thought love was control." Silence again. Then Linus looked up, his eyes wet. "Can you forgive me?" Judith did not answer immediately. She took her time. Forgiveness, she had learned, was not a gift you gave lightly. "I forgive you," she said at last, "but forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, and it doesn't change consequences." Linus closed his eyes. Tears slipped out. Judith stood. "This is the last time we will meet," she said. "I wish you clarity, not comfort." She turned and walked away, and for the first time since their divorce, she felt nothing pulling her back. Outside the prison, Judith inhaled deeply. The sky was wide, open. She smiled softly. Life did not suddenly become perfect after that, but it became honest. Judith stopped pretending she was unbreakable. She allowed herself to rest. She hired slowly, trusted carefully, loved intentionally. Noble remained by her side, older now, calmer, but still alert, still loyal. Sometimes Judith would sit on the floor beside him and say nothing at all. And that was enough. 1 year later, Judith stood in the same living room where everything had changed. The same spot. Different woman. She looked at the floor where the envelope had fallen. She shook her head slightly. "So much destruction," she murmured, "from something so small." Noble barked softly. She smiled, but also so much truth. She walked to the window and watched the sunset. Orange, gold, peaceful. Judith Adeyemi had survived betrayal, violence, fear, and loss. But more than that, she had learned. Judith turned off the lights that night and went to bed. Noble lay at the door, watching, not because danger remained, but because love stayed. That morning started like any other. The sun was gentle. Noble had followed her out as usual, slower now due to his age and declining strength. His steps measured, his tail wagging in small, careful movements. But Judith noticed it. He didn't run ahead. He didn't circle the yard. He sat down. "Noble?" she called softly. He lifted his head and looked at her. His eyes were calm but tired. Judith was restless. She knelt beside him and placed her hand on his fur. It was warm. Just wrong. "You're not feeling well today, are you?" she whispered. Noble licked her hand once. That day, he ate little, drank slowly. He followed Judith from room to room, but instead of standing guard at the door like he always did, he lay down near her feet, watching her with eyes that felt deeper than usual. Judith cancelled her meetings. She sat on the floor with him, stroking his head, telling him stories he had already lived through with her. "You remember the letter?" she said softly, smiling through a lump in her throat. "You were very brave that day." Noble's tail moved once. By afternoon, his breathing became shallow. Judith called the vet. Her hands were shaking. The doctor arrived quickly, checked him carefully, then looked up at Judith with eyes full of quiet truth. "He's old," the vet said gently. "Sometimes it's just time." Judith shook her head. "But he was fine yesterday." The vet nodded. "I know." They moved Noble outside, under the sun, because he always loved it there. Judith sat on the grass and pulled his head gently onto her lap. She cradled him the way she had the day he saved her life. The sun warmed his fur. Birds chirped. Life went on. Judith stroked his head slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks without sound. "I'm here," she whispered. "I'm right here." Noble looked up at her, just once. His eyes were clear, and for the first time Judith saw tears coming from his eyes, the first time he ever saw a dog crying. It was then she knew something bad was about to happen. His tail wagged, once, then twice. Then it stopped. Judith felt it before she saw it, the stillness, the weight, the absence of breath. "No," she whispered. "No, please." She bent over him, pressing her forehead to his head, her tears finally breaking free. She didn't scream. She didn't wail. She cried the way people cry when something good leaves quietly. When the vet left, Judith stayed there a long time, just her, and Noble. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Judith buried him herself beneath the almond tree he loved. No crowd, just her hands, the earth, and a heart that understood gratitude and loss at the same time. When she finished, she sat beside the small mound and whispered, "You didn't just save my life," she paused. "You saved who I became." 10 years later, the house in Lekki was quieter. Not empty, just settled. Judith Adeyemi sat on the veranda one calm evening, a light shawl around her shoulders, watching the sun sink slowly behind the flowers. Lagos still moved fast beyond her gates, but inside her compound, time moved gently now. Judith's group had grown, stronger, cleaner, more intentional. She was no longer everywhere. She chose her moments. She chose her battles. She chose her peace. Beside her sat a framed photograph of her dog, Noble, older, grey around the muzzle, sitting tall, eyes steady, wearing the same calm courage that once saved a life. Noble was gone now. It's already 2 years he passed quietly on that sunny afternoon, his head resting on Judith's lap, his tail giving one last slow wag, as if to say, "I did my job." Judith never rushed that goodbye. She had learned not to. In the compound stood a small stone plaque beneath the almond tree Noble loved to lie under. It didn't say much, just one line. He did not speak, but he saved everything. Children who visited the house often asked about the dog. Judith always told the story, not as a tragedy, but as a reminder. "That dog," she would say softly, "taught me that loyalty is not loud, that danger doesn't always shout, and that love sometimes looks like instinct acting faster than fear." Sometimes she paused, then added, "And that survival is not luck, it's awareness." As the evening breeze brushed her face, Judith closed her eyes. She was not the woman she used to be. She was better. Not harder, just clearer. And somewhere in that quiet space between memory and gratitude, Judith smiled, knowing that even years later, Noble was still protecting her. Not with teeth, but with truth. This story teaches that danger does not always look dangerous. Sometimes it arrives quietly, smiling, familiar and trusted. Evil often hides behind comfort and routine. Loyalty is revealed in action, not words. Noble did not speak, he acted. True loyalty shows itself when it costs something. Betrayal hurts most when it comes from inside. Stella's betrayal cut deeper than Linus's hatred because trust had been given freely. That pain is real and valid, and Judith felt it so much because she truly cared and trusted Stella. Forgiveness is not the same as access. Judith forgave, but she did not reopen doors. Healing does not require returning to harm. Control is not love. Chief Linus confused power with affection. When control is threatened, love turns dangerous. Survival changes you, and that's okay. Judith did not return to who she was before. She became wiser, quieter, more grounded. Growth doesn't always look loud. Healing is not forgetting, it is choosing peace anyway. Judith remembered everything. She simply refused to live in it. Judith is a woman who learned strength the hard way. Her calm is earned, not natural. She leads with caution now, not fear. Her greatest victory was reclaiming her sense of self. Noble represents instinct, truth, and unconditional loyalty. He acts without ego, without reward. He reminds us that sometimes wisdom does not speak, it reacts. Stella is the tragedy of unresolved anger. She allowed resentment to grow quietly until it consumed her judgment. Her punishment began long before prison. Chief Linus is a man destroyed by the need to dominate what he could not own. His greatest loss was not his freedom, but his inability to accept rejection. What is your view about this story? Where are you watching from? If you enjoyed this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.